Welcome to the Hopevale podcast. I'm Tamara Schlatter, the Bay City Campus Director, joined today by Pastor Josh Pardee and Pastor Nate Murray as we dive into our current sermon series, Kingdom Manifesto, the Revolution of the Blessed. This week, we're diving into the beatitude of blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
You started yesterday's sermon series talking about how much your oldest child is enjoying starting to look like you.
Yeah.
In your own words, he's becoming super handsome, right?
That's right. Yeah. Ridiculously good looking, attractive.
That's
there's
words.
so many adjectives.
Confidence is not an issue
Yeah,
in the
confidence
party.
is not an issue.
Pride, maybe.
We'll get there.
We're all works in progress,
That's right. That's right.
Nate, do you have any strong family resemblances in your family?
I look a lot like my father.
Okay.
And I always appreciated that because my dad said when he was growing up, people told him he looked like his mother. And he never liked that.
Okay.
And then thankfully my children got their mother's looks. So that's positive.
Awesome.
Answer to prayer.
Well, in the vein of peacemaking, we know that children are typically not peacemakers. My brother and sister always tried telling me I was adopted because I was younger.
Oh, wow.
It didn't fly because I looked just like my dad. So it just, I never believed them. But my dad actually is adopted.
Okay.
And a handful of years ago, he went and did one of those online tests, DNA testing. And through that and some Facebook investigation, we were actually able to find his birth mother.
Wow.
Because when I found a picture of her, I was like, that's her. I know that's her because I've been looking at that face for 35 years of my life because I look identical to her.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
That's really cool.
My mom says, I won't see you when you're 80. I won't still be alive, but I'll now know what you'll look like when you're 80.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a fun story
That
of
is really cool.
family resemblance.
Yeah.
So we were able to pinpoint her just by looking at her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Also, it is good to have you back because last week I had to host and it wasn't good. I
Yeah.
was
We
stumbling
just stared
all
at each
over.
other for a solid 10 minutes.
I didn't know how to talk with an intro, an outro. It was bad. So
We made it
it's
through
good to
that.
have you back.
Thanks for covering for
Yeah.
me. I
Welcome
actually
back.
haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. I thought of that on my way in
Yeah.
to see how you guys did and grade
But
you.
it was bad. Just burn it down. That's fine.
Don't
There were some redeemable
There-
parts.
I was trying to. Yeah.
The parts where I was talking were redeemable.
I
but-
told you we needed you to bring it last week. So yeah.
Flu beat running through my family. So praise God I'm here and I haven't caught it yet. So, All right. So we're talking about peacemaking instead of being a peacekeeper. Actually, I want to talk about conflict. You talked yesterday also about what's your gut reaction for conflict. And I wanted to hear from you guys. Are you one running towards it or the one hiding from it? I know your answer.
Yeah,
but I want our audience to
I
hear.
generally run towards conflict. That doesn't mean that I always love it or that I think everyone to some degree has the moments where the heart is racing or you're nervous or whatever. But I struggle to live in a world where if I sense there's conflict between us and we're just not going to address it, to me that it's superficial, it's fake, it's something along those lines. If you do Enneagram work, I lean more towards that side of entering conflict. But I also have a high wing in a different number where that my ultimate goal though is peace. It is wanting everyone around me to be good and okay. So I'm not just entering conflict usually just to find conflict or anything like that. But so that's kind of how I lean.
All right, Nate.
And actually, there's some insight here for Josh and I working together.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say the numbers. I don't know why you're keeping them a secret.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
So if you do Enneagram work,
I don't want to be painted into a box.
I was going to call you out on what
Josh
you are, and
is
then
an 8.
he was being secretive about it. I'm like, are we not supposed to say?
Apparently, I'm just saying it.
Okay.
So Josh is an 8 if you've done Enneagram work, which is known as the challenger in some circles. But he has a really strong
9.
part of himself that's also a 9.
Yeah.
Called a 9 wing, which is the peacemaker. And then I'm flipped on that. I'm a 9, I'm a peacemaker, but I have a strong 8 wing. So I feel like that's part of the reason Josh and I work well together because we speak each other's languages. And I think we help each other ebb and flow sometimes too.
Yeah.
So For me, to answer your question, Tamara, I've been a conflict avoider most of my life and wanted to please people and keep the peace. So been a peacekeeper most of my life. But over the last few years, with really the help of some friends, shout out to my friend John, have embraced conflict as a holy task. And when it's approached in a healthy way, it can be really holy work. So I'm in the season of my 8, is the way I say it now, where I'm embracing that when it's healthy. My wife insists I'm just an 8.
Yeah.
She's like, glad everybody else gets to see you as a peacemaker. At home, you're a challenger. But yeah, so I've seen the value of it now. What about you?
I am a 1, so we're sequential
Yep.
around the circle
Right.
here. And shout out to John as well. John helped me with a massive revelation in my life. So 1s are all about justice and having things right. But John helped me to see that my way is not always right.
Yeah.
I put a lot of thought into things. And my husband's actually a number 9, and so conflict avoidance. When I did the Enneagram work, it helped me to see that I want it to be right, whatever it is, and I'm willing to go to the lengths to confront and have conflict and really hash through it all to get us on the right page. But it really just came out with me looking like I wanted to be right. So I probably pursued the Roman way of like, I'll just burn your city down in order to bring peace, instead of being curious. That was the word that came up for me yesterday during the sermon. How do we pursue peacemaking? And I think it starts with curiosity and starting to ask more questions and to say like, okay, how did you come to your answer? Like help me get to your side instead of just telling you my thoughts. And because then it looks like I'm just beating you down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
truly, I just want what's right. It's
Right.
not about me winning.
Yeah, and 1s are all right. I'm going to give a couple talking points about Enneagram since we went down this path. 1s are reformers, is usually how they're talked about. So you have this amazing superpower of being able to always see how things can be better, but that's also kind of like a gift
Yeah.
and a curse
Yeah,
of like you
for
can
sure.
always see things, so you can't necessarily be at peace or any of those things. Here's my qualifications. I think if you've never done Enneagram work, highly recommend The Road Back to You by Ian Cron. Don't take the test. Just go read the book first. It lays out every number. Usually how it works is whatever number you're like, oh gosh, I really don't want to be that number. That's generally who you are.
It's a moment of deep discomfort.
Yeah.
Well,
So let's
that's what
describe.
Nate's friend John taught us. Read them. You'll see
Yeah.
yourself in a lot of the numbers, but there's
Yeah.
one that you're going to go,
Yeah.
that's probably you.
I also would say sometimes people who are getting into it in an unhealthy way, like over-identify with their number.
For sure, yeah.
The whole point is that we would say Jesus is the one who perfectly lives out all of the numbers. And so you're trying to grow. Like sometimes people are like, that was probably even a little of my reluctance of sharing my number of like, but I don't want to only be known as an 8 because I'm trying to grow in all of the numbers, right? And grow. So I don't want to just be like, well, I'm an 8, so you just got to deal with me sort of a
Right.
thing, right? So there's a lot more we can talk about. We're not a podcast on the Enneagram right now, maybe someday, but those will just give you like my 2 qualifications of like, that's how you should find out who you are. It is very helpful of learning about your identity and how you kind of operate in the world, just like so many of the other personality kind of tests are. But then also the goal is to grow in all of the other numbers, which sometimes those other tests don't do that. They're kind of like, no, this is who you are,
Right.
sort of a thing.
And also to understand the people around you too.
Yeah.
Not only see things through your lens, but to understand the people that you love and work with and what motivates them too. You know?
Yeah.
Well, and it helped me to see how people were experiencing me. I was coming in like Rome.
Yeah.
It's not what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
So. But I am interested because you've had to do a lot of this work of shifting from peacekeeper and being complacent to being peacemaker. What stuck out to you in yesterday's message?
So much. Yeah, it's the world that my heart motivation lives in. I don't know how to say that differently. It's the whole idea of peacekeeping versus peacemaking, I think, is the key, because that's where my inner conflict lies. And it's my inner conflict between operating in the flesh, like independent of Jesus, versus operating in the spirit, dependent on him. So if I'm operating independently, I'm keeping the peace. And it's really a selfish thing. It's just like, I just need peace.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do whatever I have to. And I will sacrifice your feelings and my feelings and everybody's feelings if we can just have peace. Where peacemaking is, I mean, it's everything that Josh talked about. It's really, it's self-sacrificial, and it's seeking everyone's best. And it's what Jesus does constantly, and really adeptly. But yeah, there were several things that stuck out to me. I think I've been thinking through just the concept of Midwestern nice, and we've been talking about that as a staff, actually, and how those two roads kind of converge, where there is this thing, those of you that are in the Midwest that have grown up here, there's a thing called Midwestern nice.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing. It's a special quality. We noticed it when we came here for the first time to interview from Texas. Everyone was just so nice and genuinely nice. It's not a fake thing, because we've been around fake politeness a lot, and that's not what Midwestern nice is. But if you take Midwestern nice culture to an extreme, and especially within spiritual circles, I think people can confuse niceness with godliness. And don't think those two things are necessarily the same thing. And I think sometimes niceness is more like peacekeeping, and it avoids discomfort.
Yeah.
And so because of that, a lot of times it will sidestep necessary conversations, and it'll move around challenges and obstacles and problems instead of through them, and then ends up creating more challenges along the way. So I think, yeah, that just the big headline to me was peacekeeping versus peacemaking, and defining the difference between the two. Because I think peacekeeping, like you said, it avoids disruption for you and for others, while peacemaking enters the disruption. So,
Yeah.
Do you see a generational shift in that, from avoidance to more confronting problems?
No.
You don't. If you look at like your grandparents' generation, were they more upfront, and or is that a healthy thing versus a not healthy, Christian versus non-Christian, but in general in the world?
I would say it's more of, instead of a generational thing, I think every generation gets cranky as they get older. Forgive me, my more mature friends. But I think adults do get to a point where they aren't willing or able to give as much bandwidth to keeping everybody else happy.
Yeah.
And eventually people just kind of start saying what they think, but not in a good way, not in a peacemaking way, just more in of like, I'm going to say what I think now. Like, right. I've been dancing around your feelings for 50 years. Here's the truth. So I think I see more of that than like Generation X is more peace, making than,
I was going to say, I think I'm influenced by who I'm around in life, but I think if I were to go generationally, I would say it has shifted in the areas where people are nice, or where they're willing to enter into conflict, right? So like the way I think it plays out in marriages, very different than it was 50 years ago. But then the way that we are able to talk about in a healthy way our political beliefs or those things, also very different than 50 years ago. So like, I think it's kind of, I think it's just every generation stepping in and still having to deal with the reality of what does it mean to be a peacemaker versus peacekeeper. And the zeitgeist does change. Like, our cultural moments do change, of like, it is more acceptable to talk about your relationship in a marriage openly than it was 50 years ago.
For sure.
Of like, it was just 50 years ago. Like, I think of like my grandparents' generation, it was like, these are our roles. This is what we do. We don't like, it's just non-negotiable,
Right.
I think that's way different, and it's not right or wrong. It's just like, this is a different moment. So I just think every generation is kind of entering into their cultural moment, but I think it still does come down to this reality of how we're going to enter in and what we're going to bring about. And I was thinking of, Nate, what you said of, part of it is how we do observe Jesus and how he goes about it. And part of Jesus and being a peacemaker, I think, is the slow, patient work that is required. So peacemaking is not efficient. I think a lot of times we want to be able to go on social media and shout out our takes on whatever has happened in the news or whatever our theological belief is about topic X or whatever. And I don't know. I just don't know how helpful that has been now looking back on that for how long we had social media, 20 years maybe, or somewhere in that range coming up on. As opposed to, I think peacemaking is more like the slow work of gathering around a table and sharing a cup of coffee or a meal. And it's actually a little bit more uncomfortable because I have to sit with you and we have to actually enter into conflict, right? Of where we maybe don't see things the same way. But I think that's the more faithful work that pays off in the kingdom over the long run than some of the more, maybe like a word we could use is superficial ways that we even think we're peacemaking, right? And we're just really virtue signaling to others of like, no, I'm on the right side of this sort of a thing. So, yeah. I had a question of, or one part I was going to even add into the sermon, and then I ended up pulling it, just for reasons of time. There's debate of whether the Beatitudes are building off of each other or not. We've kind of talked about that a little bit on here. But when it gets to peacemaking, I think it's the most compelling reason to why you would think that they build off each other. Because, so let me give you kind of my line of thinking of like, I don't know how you can go about doing the work of peacemaking essentially unless you are someone who is poor in spirit and has learned to like enter in of like in humility. I don't know how you do it unless you are someone who can mourn, which we framed as being honest about what the situation is. I don't know how you can do it unless you're going to be meek, which we talked about was like surrendered strength to Jesus being king. I don't know how you can do it unless you actually have a passion and a hunger and a thirst for what is justice and righteous. You know, if you're going the wrong direction or have selfish motives, if you don't have a merciful heart, like if it isn't actually seeing the other person, and then if you don't have an undivided heart that's like actually focused on that being the ultimate goal. So I'm just curious like what your guys' reaction is to that, because like if there's anything that could convince me that they do build off of each other, I think it's this beatitude that gets me there.
I think all of those are true. I think it does build, but the one that stood out to me the most when you were teaching yesterday, and as I thought about it last night, was meekness, because I think meekness, like the simple definition, is strength under control, right? So I think peacemaking is that applied relationally. So it's strength under control relationally. And I think you can probably do that work with all the other Beatitudes too, pointing towards peacemaking. But specifically, I just know meekness, that concept of understanding that when we went over that a few weeks ago really stuck with me. And just exactly what that looks like. It's not weakness at all. It's strength under control. And I think peacemaking, a big part of that is that strength under control, but channeled relationally. And it's like a disciplined courage to not avoid conflict, but instead to seek to reconcile the conflict. I remembered, I wrote down Romans 12:18, and just the idea of like, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But the way that verse is written by Paul, just peace being something that we pursue and we take responsibility for it. And we don't see a lack of peace and get nervous about it and avoid it, but rather we take responsibility for that. And we bring the kingdom with us into it to say, like, what does Jesus have? Like, what's possible for Jesus to do in this to reconcile this conflict? And maybe to bring people that are missing each other to see each other for the first time, you know? I don't know. But that particularly really stood out to me. What about you?
Well, I love that verse, as far as it depends on you. And I think that really lent into the end of your message of where is Jesus inviting you to participate in peacemaking. And you started talking about Dwayne and Alice, who are actively going out in the community. So I think that verse is a great call to action, not just, you know, some Facebook post and, oh, I tried to make peace, so I'm done, right? But really taking responsibility and ownership that if you're feeling something heavy on your heart, then be in prayer and ask God where he's inviting you to join, and what actionable steps can you take to be a part of it. But to your question, I think in the first couple of weeks, I could see how you could go from mourning brokenness and then go to poor in spirit. I could see those, because I think everybody around us can recognize the brokenness in this world. And if you've ever tried fixing something and have been unable to, it ends up leading you to being poor in spirit, I think. So I could see a shift in the beginning of it, but as we were working through, I don't see how you can get to this point without having done the earlier work.
It feels like prerequisites to some degree.
Yeah, definitely.
I think too, like, I was thinking about all of the best relationships that I have in my life require conflict, or have required conflict. So there's moments where, like, I think to have good relationships, you have to me, and you all can push back on this, because this is maybe like my 8 coming back through, right? But like, so it could be my disposition. But to me, like, if at some point you're not willing to take risks in the relationship, then what are we doing anyways? Sort of a thing. Like, to me, that's you showing that you ultimately don't value it, right? Like, it's interesting because, like, there's been relationships I can think of where when conflict came, and it's not like massive conflict. It's just like I don't think you should treat me that way. Or, then it was immediately like kind of shut down, pick up ball, go home sort of thing. And to me, that's a revealing of where we really stand then, like we haven't built anything deeper to build off of. So I think, like, the person that I've had the most conflict with in my life over the last 18 years is my wife, right? Like, because we're the ones doing life together every day. So, we have ideas of how things should go. And so that provides conflict, but that's not something then that we're not showing, I don't think, how holy we are or righteous we are by avoiding that conflict. Like, we're showing how faithful we are to each other, and like, to this idea that I think we learned from Jesus and the kingdom of, like, no, this is okay. There's some rules around it of, like, we're not going to dehumanize each other or like make things personal, but there's things we have to navigate and we have to figure out. So I don't know. I was just curious too, like, is that your guys' experience as well? Would you push back, or would you reframe any of that of how we think about conflict? Because I do think one of the things that can happen in the church is that it is, in order for us to be that Midwest nice sort of a thing, it just means, well, we just don't bring up anything that's, kind of discomfortable, uncomfortable, that brings discomfort. And again, we got to use wisdom, I think, here, and discernment. And that's, again, where I go back to you have to have all of these other Beatitudes in mind of, like, well, it's not just because, whatever, we gathered together as a community group and we ate chicken and I was hoping for pork. And so now this has turned into World War III. Like, that's obviously not what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think conflict is unavoidable. Like you said, if you're going deep with people, if you're not keeping your level of relationship just surface level, you're going to have it. And I was very naive when I got married. I was 18 years old. I did not grow up in a Christian home. So I thought, because my husband and I both knew Jesus, that it was just going to be a piece of cake. And again, here's the Enneagram 1. We're going to do it right.
Did you do marriage counseling? Or no?
We did not.
Okay.
No, nobody encouraged
everyone should
us.
do marriage counseling.
Everybody should do marriage counseling before. It's not to say you should or shouldn't get married, but just to set you up better and to go in with your eyes wide open. And that is not how we were counseled to get married. We were just told we should get married.
Sure.
And so we did. Very young, very naive. And so when conflict arose, it really threw me. It really set me back. And we didn't have wise counsel around us. We didn't have a lot of marriages that we could look to for examples. And so I was really confused of, like, are we going to make it? Are we going to fall apart? What do we do? And just really carrying this weight of the biggest piece of advice everybody gave us when we first got married was don't go to bed angry. Again, my husband is a conflict avoider. And so here I am trying to make things right. Sorry, I'm getting really personal here. And just like he'd come home from work, maybe he just had a bad day at work, and I'm like, what's wrong? What did I do wrong? We have to fix this. And now I'm badgering him, and he's pushing back even more, going, whoa, what the heck? And I just thought we were doomed instead of just understanding how to enter in. And it's okay. We're going to disagree. Like 24 years later, we still disagree on things. And that's okay.
And it's okay for you to bring up these personal things because we actually have Rudy here. And he's going to... I'm just kidding.
So
Rudy, come on out.
This is the best daytime show ever.
So funny story. Explore Hopevale yesterday after church. I was engaging with a new couple that was new to our church. Ended up being a great conversation, talking about applying these principles to our lives and talking about forgiveness. So I always use marriage as an example. And the gentleman goes, "Did you and your husband have a fight this morning?"
Oh, wow.
And Rudy was doing teardown in Bay City, so he happened to walk by like right at that moment.
That's funny.
I was like, ask him. Ask him if I'm good at forgiveness.
Sir, that's not the point.
We were talking about you.
We did not have a fight.
That's
I
funny.
think though too, like, I mean, I love that example of marriage too. I think so many times we're only handed what we only know what we're handed too, right? So like that's part of like why marriage counseling is great because you get some other perspectives. But I know people who have grown up in households where their parents were always mad at each other and it was very hostile. That's like one extreme. I know people who have grown up in the opposite where anytime there was any sort of disagreement, and I mean like super minor, that a lot of us wouldn't even say that's a disagreement, just like I really would have preferred you put the blue plates out instead of the red plates or whatever. They would like disappear and they would go talk about it, and they never did it in front of their kids. Yeah. And I think again, family's hard because we're all in a different context. So you need people walking with you that you can kind of discern these things through. It's easy to just latch on to somebody else's and then try and apply it. It doesn't work that way. You have to discern these things. But what we have tried to do in our household is model that it is okay for mom and I to disagree, and we will have these disagreements in front of you because you need to know that we are bound by something more than our disagreement.
Right.
And I know people who have really struggled and marriages that have even ended because they've entered in and they found out your thing of like, oh, we thought we were going to be perfect because we had Jesus. There's disagreement. I've never seen conflict. This must be bad, and they've basically.
Well, we saw plenty of conflict. We just didn't know how to handle it, right?
Yeah, and that's part of growing together and all those different things. But there's been moments where, I can think of one moment off the top of my head where Brandy and I were arguing about something of like how we felt like we should handle this, and she's like, I feel like we should go somewhere else. I'm like, no, they need to see us do this because we're not yelling at each other. We're not. Right. I'm clearly frustrated. They can see me frustrated, and they need to see how I'm going to process my frustration. And they need, they need to watch us if we need to model forgiveness or all of those. And I think I bring all that up because I think sometimes when it comes to, especially if you lean on the peacekeeper side of things, all of that feels like a lot to navigate and very fearful and like uncharted waters. And it may be depending on where you're at in life, but I just want to give like imagination but like, what if you could do this in a way that you can enter in a marriage or with your kids or with an employee or with a coworker or with a neighbor or, like what if there was a way that we actually, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we can actually handle all of these things because we believe that Jesus is really king. And my ultimate goal is to work towards reconciliation. It's not trying to win or dominate or get my way. And so that may end up costing me. It's probably likely going to.
Right.
Yeah.
But then to me, that's the like beauty of the call of what Jesus is doing here. It's like there is a better way here, and we don't have to run away or avoid, or we don't have to power up and dominate either.
It's okay to fight.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to fight fair.
Yeah.
And that's what you're modeling for your kids is like you're going to have conflict. There's going to be a fight every once in a while. And when you think about even beyond just marriage, just in the world, the only way we would ever not have conflict is if everybody else in the world was exactly like me and saw the world exactly like I do and wants all the same things I do.
Right.
And that would be terrible. Like,
Well, and you don't
there's-
even have it in your own house, right?
Yeah.
Because like your spouse doesn't see it, the person you love the most and
But-
you've committed your life to.
But the work of God is work of reconciliation. And he chose to make the world as diverse as it is. Out of his abundant wisdom, he determined the best thing to do was to create incredible diversity within humankind. And then he goes about the work of bringing reconciliation, not only from humankind to himself, but also between humankind. And then Corinthians talks about that ministry of reconciliation that we're invited into. And it's an important work that he defines a little bit of who we are as his children as being reconcilers. And so because the world is so diverse and because there's so much conflict, there's all kinds of opportunities to bring reconciliation into the relationships that we have and to seek. My stomach's growling. Excuse me. That was almost clippable, and now it's not. But we've been invited into that to step in, and it's like peacemaking is not just a side project for God.
Yeah.
It is central to his character and to who he is.
Yeah.
And because of that, we're invited not into a side project, but into the primary work of the kingdom, which is to bring reconciliation where there's a lack of it. So I think, like, the question I left with from your message yesterday was, when people see me handle conflict, to the truth of what you said, does it look like my father?
Yeah.
Does it look like my heavenly dad when I'm entering into conflict? And I think that's the key. It's let's not avoid conflict, because there's this whole idea of confrontational integrity where what we tend to do is avoid conflict, but then we keep a record and it begins to build up. And then a lack of confrontational integrity means that I'm not talking to the right person at the right time in the right place for the sake of health.
Right.
Instead, I'm talking to the wrong person. I'm talking at the wrong time, in the wrong place, and I'm not seeking health. I'm seeking control. So we need to seek confrontational integrity so that we're not sidestepping it constantly and bringing unhealth, because avoidance and peacekeeping is not fruitful. It's not of the Spirit. It's really full of death, whereas peacemaking is full of life. It's full of the fruit of the Spirit, because that's the work that God wants to do, is doing, and invites us to join him in, right?
Yeah, and I think, like, part of me wants to really get super practical here too. There's the whole big kingdom part, but part of it's like, even is I think of our kids and like watching us in conflict. Part of it's helping them, though, then learn how to enter into conflict, or even adults or whatever. But like, this can happen in minor ways. I mean, they will tell you. I mean, I've read accounts, and they will say, like, there are some young people that are showing up to job interviews with their parents. They're like, 18 to 20-year-olds, whatever. And I'm not picking on them, but it's just like, this is part of, like, to me, that's a parenting style that has not taught people how to be peacemakers. They've tried to be peacekeepers. So like, the antidote to that is, one of our kids serve in different ministries at the church or whatever. And so one of them had to, he wasn't going to be able to show up to serve in the kids wing or whatever, and kids men. So we had him, like, he had to write the message to the volunteer coordinator to make sure and say, hey, I just need to let you know in a couple weeks I'm not going to be able to be there. We made it like, hey, is there anything that I can do to help find my replacement? You know what I mean? Like, those are like little muscles that are actually kind of building towards all of the things that we're talking about, right? Like, you can't enter into massive peacemaking work if you haven't learned some of those muscles. And so, again, it's all contextual. You have to discern it. But even things like, you know, kids learning to talk to their band instructor or their drama teacher or their coach or whatever it is, like, them learning how to, they are uncomfortable situations. That's okay. Like, that's part of their growing muscles. Like, help them, sit them down, prep them, send them out, and then bring them back. And if you need to step in as a parent, I think afterwards, and then like, hey, now let's all go sit down together. Right. I feel like I could help bring, you know, and then they get to watch you model it. But like, part of this is put on us as adults with kids, or as leaders in, you know, in our context, in ministry or in your business or whatever. Like, part of it is we're all looking for someone who will actually do this, and we don't, we haven't had good models of it.
Right. But doesn't that lead back to understanding that our identity, that's what you were talking about, understanding that as image bearers of God, as children of God, this is core to our identity because it's core to who he is. And if we can't understand that, then we can't teach our kids that either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and part of what Paul teaches is that Jesus himself is our peace. So the truth is, even when there's conflict, if Josh and I are in conflict, the reality is, as a believer, Josh can't take my peace.
Right.
Because he doesn't hold my peace. He is not my peace. My relationship with Josh is not my peace. Jesus himself is my peace. So if you want to talk about identity, you have all the peace you need in Jesus, which should be liberating to then step into the conflict, knowing I walk into this fully confident in who I am in Jesus and knowing that he's going to supply everything I need for the conversation. But even if the conversation doesn't go the way I want it to, even if our goals aren't aligned when we're done, I still have the peace of Jesus. And so I can enter in without fear. I can enter in without worrying about regretting it later because I'm taking the peace of Jesus with me. So that's as an Enneagram 9, as a peacemaker, like a core part of who I am, I have to remind myself that all the time, that if I come home and my wife and my child are in conflict, that doesn't take my peace. You know, if there's something going on at work, if I have to have a hard conversation at work, no matter how that goes, good or bad, if I'm trusting in Jesus, when I walk out of that conversation, he is the peace that I need, not the result of the conversation. And if I walk in with that kind of sense of identity and I'm drawing from that instead of everything else, it throttles down all the pressure. And then it allows me to really focus in the moment. Like, all right, if you're my peace, then what are you at work doing in this? Like, I'm stepping into this hard conversation or this conflict or whatever, and Jesus is not like stressed about it. You know, he's at peace, and then he himself is my peace. So if that's the case, it's like having the most incredible advisor in the world, you know, where it's like anything we talk about in the moment, I can depend on Jesus to be in and through me what I need. And if I've studied up on his word and I know his character and I know who he really is, and I understand the way my identity functions because it's been explained clearly through the scripture I've studied, I bring all of that with me to the table. And in the moment, I'm unoffendable. Like, you can't offend me. You can't take my peace in this moment. And that changes the ball game a lot, because sometimes even in conflict, it becomes this negotiation of like, you know, who's going to win. And if I'm seeing Jesus as my peace, then there is no winning outside of just, what does Jesus want here? You know, for you, for me, for the situation, for the other people that are impacted. So,
well, and then with that too, like that's to me where Jesus' kingdom is so different, because in every other kingdom, it is always the end that justifies the means. But even the way Jesus lives is by the means of the Father, right? So like, by definition, Jesus does not live a successful life because he's crucified at the hand of the state, right? So this way of living is not efficient. It's not advantageous for you as an individual necessarily, or any of those things. It is, the call in the kingdom is we are only called to be faithful. We are not called to be successful, right? And like, even as people who are leading in this church, right? Like, our job as leaders is to remain faithful to who Jesus is and to follow him as king. Maybe we'll be successful. Maybe we won't by the world's eyes. It really doesn't matter, because the end does not justify the means, is what, like, part of what I hear you saying there.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It is his peace. It is not. And so if you disentangle yourself from all of the other expectations or your own preferences, or, you know, your specific goals that you feel like will define what success is, it's not how it works.
Well, you said it could be costly to be a peacemaker, but the only cost that I'm really hearing you guys talk about is surrendering what my view of my identity is, my need to be right, to understand who I am in Jesus, and that if I'm not right, that's okay, and that I'm still worthy. So it's ultimately surrendering our views of our identity, our false views of what our identity is.
I think it starts there. I mean, I think it has implications though beyond. It can cost you. It can cost you
everything.
Yeah, everything. Like, so it starts with identity, but once you understand your identity is secure, it feels less risky, and it encourages you, I think. But in this age, it can cost you status, or it could cost you money, or it could cost you, how people perceive you, or whether they understand you, or I don't know. It could be a million different things.
But as you move through the other Beatitudes, maybe that cost of money or that cost of status doesn't concern you so much anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're pure and heart oriented towards God, those things maybe don't concern you as much anymore.
Yeah.
And with all of that, like, we're in a culture where I think one of the easiest ways to gain attention is to escalate conflict in an unhealthy way. And then we've talked a lot about avoidance, that sometimes the easiest way to preserve comfort is to avoid conflict. But I think if we belong to Jesus, we don't have to avoid conflict to protect our comfort, because he provides our comfort. And then we also don't have to escalate conflict to protect our ego, which is what we do sometimes. I get loud and I try to be louder, and because I have an ego that I'm trying to protect. I think we're blessed as peacemakers, because when we move toward conflict with costly love, and I do think there's times it costs everything. It can cost you like success in this world. It can cost you power and esteem in this world. And those are tangible things sometimes.
Yeah.
But if we move toward conflict with a willingness to pay that kind of costly love in the same way that Jesus did for us, then I think we get what you talked about in the message, where the world, even though if we're paying a temporary price now of losing prestige, losing power, that kind of thing, we may pay that temporary price, but on the eternal stage, I think people are like, that looks a lot like what I hear God is like, you know?
Right.
And in that way, we can show somebody something tangible about what we're talking about. It's taking all these ideas that we talk about on a weekly basis and showing them in the real world to the people around us. And it was costly for Jesus. It was incredibly costly for him and for the Father and for the Spirit to do what happened there on the cross. But what it accomplished was absolutely incredible. So we have that model. But I just loved that thought. And again, it takes me back to that question. I think it's a question we all need to ask is, whatever conflict I'm in, if it's a simple conflict with my wife, if it's conflict with my kids, if it's conflict at work, whatever it is, a conflict over the fence line with my neighbor, whatever it is, when I enter into that, what are people seeing? And I think that's the question that I was left with. And I think it's a good one to maybe end on.
I think it's a great one to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, guys. And we will see you all next week as we continue this conversation.